welcome to the PG Podcast number 108. It's so exciting to be back with you in your AirPods or in your living room, on your smartphone, or on your computer. Today we have such a good topic for you. It's called It's Saturday Night and My Sermon Sucks. Okay, so maybe it doesn't pertain to everybody because not everybody goes through that same anxiety I do every Saturday night when your sermon sucks. But I know you all have anxiety after working so hard on a project or so hard on baking a cake or writing a book or creating something, only to feel so insecure when it's done that nobody's gonna like it, it's not gonna reach the audience you meant for it to reach, everybody's gonna laugh at you, your own family are gonna think you're crazy, and the lack of support you're going to feel as a result of your brainchild is gonna just let you down. So many of us, we don't put forth our best efforts, or we don't let the world see what we've created because we're so afraid that it sucks. Well, if that's you, if you're the one who's refused to write your book, draw your picture, bake your cake, take your course, go back to school, or preach your sermon because you're so afraid that it's not good enough, not that you're not good enough, but what you've produced is not good enough, then welcome to the world of Preacher Girl. Every Saturday night, I get that feeling. I'm done with the sermon, but I'm sure it sucks. This podcast is just for you. And guess what? We have some special guests coming up, so stay tuned. So today I have some special guests, like I said. My podcast stage manager, that's Fanny Mahabir, is here. My own executive assistant, Michelle Solomon, is here as well. And the Chief Operations Officer of Hope NYC, none other than Ruthie Archibald, is here as well. Okay, so ladies, tell us, have you ever felt like what you've got to present is not going to be good enough? Like, Shiki, what about you and your songs?
Oh my gosh, the night before I run to the bathroom like every second.
We've all been there. You know, she has a song ready and she's a beautiful singer, but she still has that pre-performance jitters or pre-ministry. She says she has diarrhea all the time. Sorry for saying that word. What about you, Nan?
Yeah, I go and hide in the bathroom all the time.
Well, Fanny does the what's happening at Hope every Sunday. But whenever it's about to start, if you notice, she leaves me and hides. She runs to the back. I never knew where she was. I thought she was with the programmer people. She's in the bathroom. She's hiding because she doesn't want us to see. She doesn't want to be there when we watch the podcast. What about you, Ruthie? Ever feel like that?
Yes. All the time.
So, like, if you do a big project, do you ever think like it's gonna suck and everybody's gonna blame you?
Yes.
Okay, so you see, I brought them here so that you would see that it's not just you. It's not just you afraid to put out the book. I had one author write me this morning the first chapter of a book, and she said, "Would you mind reading this?" And I said, "I would love to read it." And it was so magnificent, but she was sweating the whole time because she was afraid of what I was going to say. And it was so terrific. Well, every Saturday night, I feel that way when my sermon is done. I'm finished, but it sucks, you know? So I'm going to talk to you for a minute. But first, I want to ask these three ladies to help me with an experiment. It's an egg. And I'm going to give you guys a minute to see which of you can make the egg stand on its head. So right there on the table, whoever wants to go first can go first. You can just make the egg stand on its head. Okay, you only get one try. Go, Fanny. Stand on its head. No. Okay, Shiki, your turn. Okay, so this was an actual experiment conducted by Christopher Columbus when he came back from rediscovering, 1942, 1948, all those times when he discovered the West Indies and the United States rediscovered of America. And he went to dinner with a bunch of people who laughed at him and said, "What's the big deal? You sailed an ocean and came up on an island, and now you are calling yourself a discoverer." And he said to them, "Make this egg stand on its head." And nobody could make the egg stand on its head, so he did this.
Oh!
And that's how you make an egg stand on its head.
I didn't even think about that.
Right, I know, but look, it's so easy. But what's the point? The point is once somebody shows you how to do it, it's an obvious thing. You start thinking, well, you didn't tell me I could break the egg. You didn't tell me any of those things. But now the next time somebody says, make the egg stand on its head, it's the simplest thing in the world. What's the point? The point is when you create something, even if it's simple to you, and it doesn't seem profound enough, and it doesn't seem deep enough and important enough. In fact, it's such an ordinary thing. It doesn't matter because people, even though they may know it, they don't know it.
Yeah.
They don't know it. And so once you show them how to do that simple thing, it becomes easy to them. Will you give my girls a round of applause for being here? Yay! Here are some small pieces of advice to those of you who have a project, who have a performance, who have ministry to do, or have anything that needs to be put in front of other people that you're so worried they're not gonna like. And these things help me every Saturday. And I'm sorry, I know some of you are disappointed that I've been preaching for 30 years and I still feel that kind of anxiety, but I do. But these are the things that help me. One, is to know that everybody feels that. And the day you stop feeling like that is the day you think you've arrived. And by then, nobody really wants to hear what you have to say. Your authentic self is a self that's a little bit nervous and a whole lot of dependent. A whole lot of desperately dependent on the Holy Spirit to help you deliver your message properly. The day I stop feeling anxious and I'm like, oh, I got this, is the day I don't really want to do this anymore. Because what I've got to say comes from within me, but it really needs to come from God. So preacher girl, if it's a song to deliver, if it's a book to write, if it's a cake to bake, if it's a message to preach, then let that dependence on God, if that's what's causing you a little bit of anxiety, everybody feels it. Second thing I want you to remember is that God doesn't always come down with angels. I know. You expect a moment, an epiphany, a burst of revelation in your spirit. It doesn't always happen that way. In fact, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't happen that way. You know, in my experience, most of the times when I have that kind of, whoa, this is gonna be terrific, it doesn't really turn out that way. But when I have that feeling like, oh my gosh, God, I'm gonna bum. This is not gonna be good at all. Then God shows up and does something extremely powerful. More people come up to me and say, that was just an amazing revelation. And I'm like, really? Why? Because I can't take his glory. So girl, calm down. Relax. Breathe. Our God has a way of perfecting his praise through weak people. That's why the Bible said that his strength is made perfect in your weakness. So celebrate the fact that you're not too sure of yourself. Celebrate the fact that your strength comes from knowing who is speaking through you, who is baking through you, who is writing through you. And then it's going to be fantastic. So while I've helped you to calm your nerves possibly a little bit, I want to give you a few tips to make sure that your work, whether it's a sermon, a song, a book, a cake, whatever it is that you're crafting, whatever it is that you're pouring yourself into, that it turns out to be fantastic. Now across the board, no matter what your ministry or industry is, a rule of thumb is that it takes people 8 seconds to decide whether what you're saying, singing, or doing is going to have an impact on them. If you're in commerce and if you're an entrepreneur, it's going to take me just a few seconds to decide whether I'm buying what you're selling. So you want to make sure that that introduction, that first line, that first note, that ingredient mix, whatever it is you're doing, in the very onset, you're out of the gate strong. And in a sermon, that is so important. I've been to churches where the preacher will read 35 verses of scripture before he ever starts. Read the whole story and then proceed during the sermon to tell us the story. I know what an exegesis is. And really what you've just done is tell me twice. And repetition, there is a place for that. But chances are you didn't need to read all of that. You have just that one line to grab people's attention. Jesus was so good at this. He was a metaphor marvel. He would say things like, you better look out for that light pole sticking out of your own eye before, and before what about the woman caught in the act of adultery? Do you remember when he had to speak to her? Did he turn around and say, men and brethren? No, you know what he did? He got down in the sand and he wrote with his finger. What? Do you know why he did that? Because all of a sudden everybody was like, what is he doing? What is he doing? He got their attention immediately. Whatever he had to say, he was like, shh. He got them to be quiet and stop hurling accusations without ever having to say, shut up. He was marvelous at capturing the crowd's attention. And so if you could just, at the beginning of whatever it is you're going to do, don't make a long speech. If you're going to sing already. If you're writing a book, that first line is the most important line of the book. In fact, that leads me to an awesome freebie that I have for those of you specifically that are authors. Or you have a book inside of you, whether it's an ebook, whether it's a paper book, or whatever kind of book it is that you want to write. And some of you have a manuscript, some of you have an idea, some of you have a chapter. I don't know what level you're at, but if you go to pastorsharo.com/author PG, AUTHOR PG, there is a free PDF right there for you to get you started on getting your entire manuscript written and published in a month. And it's free. You just have to go there and get it. And it's just for those of you who think that maybe you have a book inside of you that you would like to have written. Okay, so going back to it, I was trying to tell you that that first line is the most important one. So if you have a good introduction, some people say it's a hook. And I don't know if it's a hook, but without a hook, you can't catch the fish. And since we are fishes of men, I think it's a fantastic metaphor. So make sure that that first line is a good one. It is your job as a preacher girl, to communicate effectively and creatively. I don't know what happened that made people think that you had to preach in one monotonous voice or scream your way from top to bottom until you're huffing, puffing, sweating, and out of a voice in order for your message to be delivered. Now, I myself like a little bit of energy. I am that kind of listener. I like creative communicators. But as a preacher, as a teacher, as a mom, as a baker, as a creator, whatever it is, entrepreneur, you've got to learn to creatively communicate your message. For some people, that means an illustration. For some people, that means a metaphor. For some people, that means, I don't know what it is, music, dance, song, whatever it is. And you might say, I don't need a dog and pony show. I hear the preacher in you rising up. But honey, you got to keep my attention. If the people that you're speaking to are not listening to you, then what good is the message? You've got to make them listen. And I want you to know, it does not cheapen your message to have a picture. It does not cheapen your message to have literature, to have an illustration, to have an actor help you. It does not cheapen your message that people listen to it. So you get that. Don't just preach if you're writing your book. Put examples from your own life. Make it relatable so that we get what you're trying to say. Jesus said things like, can a camel pass through the eye of a needle? And, you know, I've heard theologians explain it away with the eye of the needle gate and camel and blah, blah, blah. I get it. But he was creating a visual. It was a metaphor. And he was trying to not only say, talking about something geographical, but something that people would say, well, that's pretty difficult, or it's a hard thing. So if Christ was such a creative communicator, you need to be as well. Whatever you do, deliver on your promises, girl. Have you ever been to a sale that let you down? And all the women say, hallelujah. Yeah, we've been there. 60% off. And then you go in the store and they've marked everything up 80%. So when you get your 60% discount, you're still paying. Oh, it's so disappointing. Not only that, you take a course that promises you that by the end of this course, you're gonna be a fantastic cosmetologist and all you know to do is put foundation on. Things like that are so disappointing. And even in sermons, I've heard people say, I'm gonna tell you why bad things happen to good people, and it never happens. They never tell you. If you are delivering a message, a sermon, a product, you deliver on your promise. It's so important that if you tell people you're gonna find out, then they most certainly find out. In my 30 years of preaching, there have been occasions where people have come up and said, you know, you said you were going to tell me, but you never really got around to it. Things like that make me stop and search to see whether I answered all the questions I promised to answer. It's so important that you over-deliver, or at least deliver what you've promised. And finally, say it how you get it. I know I say this a lot, but it's because it's so important to me. It's so important that your beautiful, authentic self comes through. If you don't understand what you're saying, there is no way you can explain it to anybody. I've heard people try to bring a point across before, a point that they didn't understand. And I guarantee you, if you don't understand it, you trying to tell me about it, it's not gonna work either. So always say it the way you get it. Similarly, if you're baking a cake and you know how to get it done, and somebody else tells you a trick or a tip and you're not sure of it, you say it how you get it. You bake it how you know that it works. And that's so important, that your authentic self, your beautiful self, the you that's just you. You don't have to copy everything in the world. Saying it how you understand it is so important to getting your message across properly, especially if you're authoring a book. So, and that just goes right back to my freebie. Remember, it's pastorsharo.com/author PG for the free PDF for those of you who are authors or aspiring authors. So today, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a little assignment, and I want you to meet me at the Pastor Sharo Facebook. I'm going to put a link right down below this video, and this is what I want you to do. You know that saying, the grass is always greener on the other side? Well, everybody's heard it. Everybody understands it. It's probably the most common proverb in the whole wide world. The grass is always greener on the other side. I want you to say it how you get it. In other words, don't say it just that way. Say it another way. So for instance, you could say something like, their food is always better than my food. The grass is always greener on the other side. I just want to see how many ways we can come up with to say that same thing in very different ways. I think it'll be fun. And we'll choose the best one, and I'll send you out a prize. And the prize is amazing. It is a Preacher Girl journal, one of a kind, and you can only get it from me. It's a Preacher Girl journal. It's my favorite kind of journal, because if you know me, I love books with blank pages, no lines. No lines. So we can draw, we can write, we can doodle, and it's a Preacher Girl journal just for the one who has the cleverest and most creative way to say it how you get it. So the proverb is, the grass is always greener on the other side. Once again, I hope this podcast has blessed you. Thank you so much for those of you who send me emails. I got one sweet listener said that she was so discouraged, everything was going wrong at her desk, she was crying, and the podcast came in and it just made such a difference and gave her such hope. And then someone else said they were on a hospital bed when the podcast came in and helped give them such reassurance and things like that. I don't even understand how God is doing such a mighty thing, but I thank you for sharing that with me, because you say it, it encourages me to go on. So take a moment to stop in at pastorsharo.com and let me know what you think about the podcast, and if you would, share it with somebody. Share it on your Facebook page. I'd appreciate it so much. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Preacher Girl TV. Make sure you are on the podcast on iTunes, and leave me a review if you think about it. I appreciate you. I love you. And remember, once God has called you, no one can